The United Kingdom has a long history with baseball. Some will argue that they have the longest history. Indeed, the earliest known mentions of baseball come from English texts in the 1700s, though they're referring to a different kind of baseball. And they have their own distinct version of the game. Known as British baseball or Welsh baseball, it began just after the American game came into existence, and is still played in Britain today. But that could be the subject for another video. Today we're looking at the New York game, what we all know today as baseball. The American version of the game was first introduced to the UK in the 1870s and 1880s, when professional baseball teams from the US made several trips there, playing in front of crowds as large as 8,000. Soon after, baseball clubs were formed throughout the country, and by 1890 it's estimated that 90 clubs had been established. It was in that year that the National League of Baseball of Great Britain played its only season, the first and only time that professional baseball was played in the country. The league consisted of 4 teams formed by football clubs. Most of the players were professional footballers, coming from England and Scotland. British baseball was starting to take off in Wales around this time, so the Welsh were not adopting the American game. There were also a few cricketers and professional baseball players from the US. The league was put together with the support of several cricket clubs and the National Rounders Association, and from American baseball businessman A.G. Spalding. The league title was won by the famous British football club Aston Villa, though for this competition they went by the name of Birmingham Baseball Club Limited. But the strongest team without a doubt was the Derby Baseball Club. This club was founded by Sir Francis Ley. Ley was a businessman and cricket enthusiast who had traveled to the US where he learned about baseball. He saw the potential for baseball as a shorter alternative to county cricket, played in just a few hours rather than a few days. He built the first baseball field in the country and brought in an American coach to teach the game to his factory workers. His Derby Baseball Club was so dominant, the league demanded that they stop using their star pitcher. Ley refused to do so and withdrew his team from the competition. Due to poor attendance and financial losses, it only lasted 1 year, but the sport carried on at the amateur level into the 20th century. In the next few decades, the game continued to grow, even gaining a strong following in Wales. There were some attempts to bring the American game and British game together under a single set of rules, but an agreement was never reached. Baseball's golden age in the UK was the 1930s. In 1935, the North of England League, a semi-professional league of 9 teams, was established. A year later, leagues in London and Yorkshire were founded. Baseball games were played in front of crowds of up to 10,000. Their greatest achievement came in 1938 when they hosted the inaugural Amateur World Series, the event that would later become known as the Baseball World Cup. It was a 5-game series between Great Britain and the United States, taking place at 5 separate venues in northern England. Though only 2 countries were involved, this is considered the first ever World Championship of Baseball. 2 players from the American team, Mike Schemer and Whitey Platt, would go on to play in Major League Baseball in the 1940s. Britain won 4 of the 5 games and earned the distinction of being the first ever World Baseball Champions. A year later, the second edition of the Amateur World Series took place in Havana, with the US, Cuba, and Nicaragua taking part. Due to the outbreak of the Second World War, Britain was unable to defend its title. And thus began the decline of American baseball in the UK. After the war, players and supporters drifted toward British baseball, reversing the pre-war trend, and British baseball experienced its golden age in the 1950s and 60s. So you have to wonder, if the repeated attempts to amalgamate the British and American games before the war had been successful, would the game have continued to grow after the war? And what if the war had never interrupted baseball's momentum? The British were, after all, reigning world champions. International rivalries with the US and other countries could have been born at this time. In the 1970s, the big 3 Commonwealth sports of soccer, cricket, and rugby began to dominate British sports, and baseball of any kind continuously lost support. By the end of the 20th century, there was almost nothing left of baseball in Britain. But, like in so many other countries of the world, the past decade has seen a major comeback for baseball. There are 74 active teams with over 1,500 players, and the number is growing every year. 20 universities have baseball teams. There are 3 independent leagues, 2 in England and 1 in Scotland, and a national league run by the British Baseball Federation plays from April to September. There are 3 tiers below the National League, Single A, Double A, and Triple A, that all have their own championships. The London Mets are the strongest team, having won the past 4 national championships, and 5 of the last 6. In 2020, 4 teams competed in the National League, 5 in Triple A, 17 in Double A, and 15 in Single A. In Scotland, 8 teams compete in their independent league. There are 2 teams in Belfast, Northern Ireland, but they're affiliated with Baseball Ireland and not baseball in the UK. But their success in growing the game domestically hasn't yielded much success for them internationally. The national baseball team of Great Britain is ranked 31st in the most recent WBSC World Rankings. They've competed in the WBC qualifiers in 2013 and 2017. Although they didn't qualify for the big tournament either time, they managed to pull off some good wins. In the 2013 qualifier, their win came against Czech Republic, a higher-ranked team than Great Britain, and they won convincingly, 12-5. But their other matches didn't go so well, dropping one to Canada 11-1 and getting mauled by Germany 16-1. In the 2017 qualifier, they had even more success, clobbering Pakistan 14-0 and pulling off quite a big upset over Brazil 4-3. But they fell twice to Israel, 5-2 in the first round and 9-1 in the final. For the 2021 WBC qualifier, they were put in qualifier 2, with New Zealand, the Philippines, Czech Republic, Panama, and Spain. And because they reached the final in their last WBC qualifier, they would receive a first-round bye in this qualifier, where the top 2 would advance to the big tournament. Of these 6 teams, Great Britain is ranked higher than only 2 of them, so they would need to pull off another upset, which they are capable of doing. There have been dozens of players born in the UK to play in Major League Baseball, but none that grew up there. All of them at an early age moved to another country, mostly the US, and most of them played in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and MLB's deadball era. The most famous British-born player was Bobby Thomson, born in Scotland but living in New York from the age of 2. He was a 3-time All-Star, best known for his pennant-winning 3-run home run in 1951 for the New York Giants, known as the shot heard round the world. The biggest baseball event to take place in the UK since their 1938 World Championship was a recent one. In 2019, the first Major League Baseball regular season series held in Europe was the MLB London Series. On June 29th and 30th of that year, the New York Yankees and Boston Red Sox brought their rivalry to London Stadium, playing in front of crowds of over 59,000 in each game. They were scheduled to return in 2020 with another great rivalry, the Chicago Cubs and St. Louis Cardinals. But just like in 1938, baseball's growing momentum in the UK was halted by a worldwide problem beyond the sport's control. But unlike with World War II, we don't expect the pandemic to be a death blow to baseball's growth in the UK. The enthusiasm is still there. Growing viewership is not a problem, but they'll want to speed up the growth and participation. One thing they're aiming to do is to get it played in more schools, increase domestic competition in younger age groups in hopes for a stronger national team in the future, and landing a homegrown player in Major League Baseball. Once the participation numbers are up, they'll be able to have more fields built and get more funding for their clubs. Right now they're playing with very little funding. They are on the right track though. Don't expect them to match their success of 1938 ever again, but some kind of return to the glory days of the 1930s is possible. We could see domestic teams playing in front of 10,000 fans, and we could see the UK hosting international baseball championships, once the right facilities are built. And it could happen in just a few years. Anyway, that's all for this one. Until next time, this is Baseball International. See ya.